Hello, my name is Joe Chung. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS. My role at AWS is to share my experience and best practices with senior executives for moving to the cloud. Today, I'd like to share with you best practices for large-scale migrations. Being an IT executive is one of the hardest jobs out there and is full of difficult choices that often come with expensive trade-offs. You often have to make architectural sacrifices by implementing shortcuts or workarounds to get something to market quickly. And over time, these shortcuts can add up to make enterprise IT pretty complex. CIOs and CTOs often tell me that they simply just don't have the time to keep up with the mounting technical debt as they continue to build new capabilities for their customers. However, most executives believe cloud is a critical component for digitizing and modernizing IT, and they want help to quickly get out from underneath the weight of their legacy. We see several common themes from customers looking to migrate to the cloud. The first is to increase agility. Some of our customers are creating business cases where they believe their workforce can be anywhere between 30 to 70% more productive and deliver features much faster as a result of migrating their skills and applications to the cloud. We see a lot of data center consolidation or rationalization projects, especially in companies that have been acquisitive or have otherwise experienced infrastructure sprawl over the years. We increasingly talk to companies looking to completely reimagine their businesses using modern technology as part of a larger digital transformation program. And of course, any cost-conscious organization is always looking for ways to improve the bottom line by reducing their costs. And while there are a lot of reasons enterprises are motivated to migrate their legacy to the cloud, oftentimes comprising of tens of thousands of servers or dozens of data centers, they're also asking a lot of questions about how they can do it quickly. Questions like, what's the business case? While some executives can push their organizations forward on instinct and sheer force of will, more and more enterprises are needing the proof points and confidence that a large migration is going to give them the ROI that everyone believes in and can get behind. Enterprise IT environments tend to be messy, and most people would be unwilling to take a bet on the accuracy of their CMDBs or their configuration management databases where their server information is stored. And a lot of companies are asking for help on their migrations, and many are questioning whether their partners of the past can continue to be their partners of the future. And many other questions. As you can see, these questions are just as much around people and process as they are on technology. But the good news is that there are a lot of big businesses and enterprises who have built structured programs within their organizations to answer these questions for themselves. And what I'd like to do with you is to share with you some of these best practices that we've learned from them. And these are large and industry-leading companies that you may already know. Companies like News Corp, who over the last 5 years has migrated more than 65% of their environment to the cloud while consolidating 56 data centers down to 6. And in doing so, News Corp has driven more than $100 million back in budget back towards the things that matter in their business. There's Enel, an Italian multinational utility for Europe, who migrated 5,500 instances in 9 months, which is probably one of the fastest migrations that I've seen. And at the same time, being able to drive 10x agility and time to market gains throughout their business. Capital One has gone from being a bank to being a technology company and has thousands of associates certified in AWS as they migrate their data centers to AWS. Ancestry, who's migrated over 8,500 server instances and 10 petabytes of data, including some large database migrations to Aurora and Redshift, that they can deliver to deliver value to their 2.6 million customers much faster, and they're looking to shut down their data center in 2018. And finally, even regulatory agencies like FINRA, who regulate US equities markets, looking for evidence of fraud, abuse, and insider trading. FINRA ingests, on average, 37 billion market events daily. They've migrated their big data analytics platform to AWS, which is over 20 petabytes of data for analytics and surveillance. And by moving to AWS, it's increased their performance such that some queries now run 400 times faster in AWS than on-prem. BP, Liberty Mutual, LG, McDonald's, SGN, Nikon, Ticketmaster, 3M, Expedia are just a few of the other companies that are in the process of migrating some or even all of their IT portfolio to AWS. As our CEO, Andy Jassy, likes to say, there's no compression algorithm for experience. And our customers tell us that the fact that we have more experience than anyone else in helping enterprises shut down data centers and migrate to the cloud faster is one of the reasons that they choose to work with us. Through these experiences, we've been iterating on a process by which we're codifying the best practices, tools, and partners that enterprises of all shapes and sizes can use to execute large legacy migrations. And so while every organization will have their own unique constraints and opportunities to guide their journey, the pattern we've seen in mass migrations tend to start with your AWS account team, perhaps your partner, working with customers to help them get some foundational experience in AWS, but also to develop a business case for a migration. Next, we work with customers to deploy discovery tools that help them understand their IT portfolio, which includes things like how servers are being used from a memory, storage, and network I/O perspective, but also things like the dependencies between applications, because oftentimes IT portfolios are constellations of applications which interact with each other. And then to begin to consider what types of migration strategies to employ to meet their business case objectives. In the third and fourth phases, which we sometimes call migration factory, the focus moves from the portfolio level analysis to the individual application level. And this is where we work with customers to design, migrate, and validate each application, and to be able to do that at scale. Every application lands in a new operating model, which we'll get into a little bit more. And as each customer gains experience migrating, they're often expand the scope of their migration with additional waves. It's not uncommon for us to see customers start with a portfolio or a data center and then look to expand. And we iterate this process on a closed loop feedback. With each iteration or wave, there might be a new business case, another set of discovery and planning activities. And what we expect is that migration capabilities will constantly improve. And this flywheel effect can help put companies in a position to stay much closer to a modern state enterprise architecture over time. And what I'd like to do is spend a few minutes diving into each one of these phases of this process to give you a better idea of what we're seeing and share some of these best practices. Contemplating a mass migration typically comes from senior leadership, and that's one of the first things we like to see is that strong executive sponsorship. Most significant legacy migrations require a holistic approach from across the business and throughout IT, and having a strong leader stand up to provide clarity of purpose, not be afraid to challenge the status quo, is a crucial prerequisite to driving results. But in addition to what might seem obvious, there are a few more signals that I personally like to see. Ideally, you would also like to see strong support from other stakeholder organizations and their leaders. For example, your CISO or your CFO or your COO, perhaps your HR partners, legal and procurement. So having that cross-business buy-in is important to be able to create that compelling business case and to motivate the organization to move at pace with large-scale migrations. The other thing that we'd like to see customers develop is a strong foundational competency by migrating or developing some net new applications in the cloud. The net new is a very common path that we like to see or we see with customers as it's easier to sometimes start from scratch, but it also can be very powerful to migrate a subset of applications. We're seeing with customers more and more be interested in 50 applications in 50 days, like challenges, where you take a small subset of your portfolio, move them very quickly, which provides great learning opportunities, put some quick wins on the board, and then really acts as a change agent and a change management mechanism to prove that moving to the cloud can be done at pace. We're continuing to drive foundational best practices into our methodology, our account teams, and our migration partners so that they can help you as customers build the bare minimum capabilities to get started. They include how to train your people And while it's completely reasonable to consider hiring people and partners to help you build that foundational set of cloud capabilities, we believe that you already have the people you need to get started to succeed with the cloud, provided that you're willing to train and enable them. People are sometimes afraid of what they don't know, and teaching them what they don't know is often a huge staff enabler. We've also learned that customers who create a cloud center of excellence or a cloud program comprised of people from cross-functional backgrounds is often the fastest way to understand and scale best practices and governance across your organization. Good cloud teams are taking a customer service-based approach by enabling stakeholders with the knowledge, process, and technology that a modern-day enterprise needs and creating organizational-wide capabilities. And these include things like self-service and making sure that the organization is not lifting and shifting legacy processes and preserving some of the maybe lead times, being really aiming to be able to provide superior services from an instantiation perspective. You can expect new processes to help enable that automation and that speed, but also making sure that you consider things like billing, identity and access management, and how you think about costs, and particularly as you shift to a pay-as-you-go service model. A lot of our customers are using this as an opportunity to implement a cloud operating model to automate a lot of traditionally manually expensive and error-prone tasks like patching, monitoring, and incident management. And over the past several years, we've studied what a good cloud operating model looks like and how we can automate it. And we've turned this learning into a service called AWS Managed Services, or AMS, which some of our customers are now using to automate things like patch management, change management, and triggering their incident response systems. Over the last few months, we've bootstrapped a number of customer migration efforts by leveraging AMS. So as opposed to investing in building these capabilities, being able to use AMS for the first few applications to be migrated so that they can learn how to integrate and understand what good can look like and what automation can look like, and then essentially use that as a sort of set of training wheels and enablement. And finally, a good foundation will also include technology best practices around having the right security foundation, a production environment which you can trust, that we will oftentimes refer to as a landing zone, and reference architectures that can be consistently applied to make sure you can quickly and compliantly and securely migrate your applications. And before we wrap up, we'll touch upon how customers who don't have this foundational experience can acquire it as fast as possible. Next, we help organizations create a business case that will make their entire organization excited to get behind a large-scale migration. Every organization, of course, will have their own unique drivers and constraints, but we've seen a few common drivers that customers seem to use again and again. Some customers are all about cutting costs, given the pressures on their business. A lot have variable workloads that lend themselves well to the elastic properties of cloud computing. And while your mileage may vary, it's common for us to see an operational cost savings of 30% in a lift and shift mass migration scenario, with further optimizations possible through right-sizing, auto-scaling, and re-architecting. Most of our customers tell us that being cost favorable is typically table stakes for any kind of migration, and they also tell us they're looking for much more than just saving money. Our personal favorite driver is around workforce productivity. A business case we recently developed with a Fortune 50 customer suggests that their IT workforce will be roughly 50% more productive as a result of being trained on and migrating their 8 data centers to AWS. It's a 2,000 person department, so at the end of the migration, they'll have something like 1,000 extra days of productivity than they have today. We've used this business case a number of times now, and our value engineering team has developed a model that defines typical resource and roles that comprise most IT organizations, which we can then use to tune with each customer by gathering information on how each person in their organization typically spends their time in planning, building, and operating a workload. And then we can estimate the percentage or number of hours reduced by considering what can be automated or leveraged as a service through the interviews with the teams at the customer. Typically, productivity is improved by a couple of key factors. First, not having to wait for infrastructure services to be provisioned. And then two, having over 120 plus services at their disposal that their staff would otherwise have to build and maintain because it's just there, ready to be turned on within the AWS cloud. AWS has the broadest and deepest cloud platform in the industry, and our customers are telling us that our relentless focus on innovation allows them to focus more on what matters to their business and less on the heavy lifting of running infrastructure. Some customers have big refresh cycles or data center renewals that they're looking to avoid. Condé Nast had a leak in their data center roof, which was more expensive to fix and maintain by a large margin than it was to migrate to AWS. Other customers are looking to improve their uptime. An executive we work with at Nike during one of their migrations coined the term disaster indifference for how they're architecting their scalable applications across multiple availability zones and regions to create far more resilient systems as they migrate. This is certainly the experience that I had as a customer when I went through my own migration journey, and just by shifting from on-prem to the cloud, we took advantage of this availability zone architecture and revisiting how we thought about DR for a subset of our applications. And of course, the ability to react to market conditions much more quickly. Amazon makes changes to our digital properties on average 2 times per second, which is something like 50 million times per year. And many of our customers are interested in pursuing similar benefits by moving towards a continuous integration operating model using a cloud-based platform. And to put this all into perspective, GE Oil and Gas kept tabs on each one of these drivers as they continued on their migration path, where they've already saved over $14 million by migrating more than 300 applications in 2015 alone. So if any of you are interested in working with us on developing a similar business case for your migration, please talk to your AWS account rep and we'll connect you to our cloud economics and value engineering team who is continuing to iterate on repeatable templates around these drivers and can help you get started. So once you have some foundational experience in a business case, the question is, how do you create a plan to migrate? A good plan is going to consider things like costs, how you'll migrate each application, how you'll realize the business case over time, but also remain flexible enough to adjust course and accelerate the pace of migration as you go. The challenge we see in a lot of enterprises looking to create their plan is they often don't know what's in their IT environment and how everything talks to each other. Because enterprise IT is complicated over long periods of time, there are some customers I've worked with who have been in business for over 100 years. It can be really hard to pay down technical debt as the competitive landscape and business demands, as the business demands more from technology faster. So through our experience in helping hundreds of customers who want to migrate quickly, we've been learning how to create a high fidelity data model to make sense of their environment and create a reasonable plan that they can iterate over time. And so what we do is we deploy tools within the customer's environment to automate the collection of data so that they can understand not just what's in their environment, but also how the apps communicate and how well they perform and how under or overutilized the infrastructure is underneath so that we can appropriately right-size the environment as we migrate to AWS. In 2014, we worked with Second Watch to help Condé Nast vacate their data center in 3 months. The data model that was developed showed us how underutilized most of the instances were and allowed us to make much more cost-effective decisions as they right-sized the instances throughout the migration. And while we learned how important this data model was, we also learned manual data collection takes way, way too long. It took 5 people's full-time attention to collate the data from their CMDB. And with the data collected from interviewing stakeholders across the business, because oftentimes you need additional data that sits outside of your CMDB. And so obviously the larger the environment, the longer that this will take. The other challenge is that data centers change. It's rare that a data center will sit still in its configuration. And so the data model will quickly drift from reality. So it's like losing 10% the value of your car the moment you drive it off the lot. So what we've learned is this process has to be automated and that it needs to be constant, which is why we've been investing in a tooling ecosystem that includes Risk Networks Cloudscape, which can automate the constant discovery of your application portfolio as it changes, chart its dependencies at pretty low levels of network protocols, help you decide on a migration path and right-size your instances as you migrate. As an example, Risk worked with SecondWatch and Viacom to plan a migration of 1,000 applications across 3 different data centers. Cloudomize recently helped Nimble Commerce get a handle on their AWS infrastructure to manage down costs and identify further migration opportunities from their data center. In addition to comprehensive discovery, we have tools like TSO, Logix tools, which will map your on-prem instances to the appropriate and provide recommendations to EC2 instances, taking into account differences in compute density. 16-core blade you may procure 3 years ago can now be satisfied with half as many cores and lower your costs. As an example, TSO Logic recently worked with Morningstar to help them discover more than 11,000 different assets across 8 different data centers and reduce their TCO by more than 30%, and did the same thing for Koch Industries. Several other customers are using AWS Application Discovery Service to automatically collect and collect configuration, dependencies, performance, and usage data from servers. And by being able to collect and plan migrations based on these tools is a huge accelerant. We're also seeing people use tools like New Relic and App Dynamics to make sure that they have a baseline of the performance of their applications so that when they move it to the cloud, they can see that performance has not been negatively impacted or hopefully even improve with the move to the cloud. And once you have some foundational experience migrating a few applications and have a reasonable plan in place that everyone in the organization can rally behind, it's all about accelerating the migration and achieving scale. Once some basic discovery tools and assessment has been done, each application migration tends to follow one of 6 different paths, which builds upon the Gartner 5R framework that they coined in 2011. Customers have found this framework super helpful in organizing their migration strategy, and we've outlined 6, and they include rehost, also known as lift and shift. We find that in most migration projects, enterprises end up wanting to lift and shift half or more of their environment. When I was at Accenture, we primarily executed a lift and shift of Microsoft-based workloads. I do run into customers who look at lift and shift with a bit of disdain, and as they do not want to migrate their technical debt to the cloud, sometimes I will challenge them because by migrating your legacy applications to the cloud, it can oftentimes inject new life by boosting availability and performance, and more importantly, helping with the monetization of those applications. We find that most of this can be done with some automated tooling, and though in some cases we do see customers wanting to try this manually as a learning experience. The other path is replatforming. As an example, moving from WebLogic to Tomcat. Oftentimes we see organizations moving from proprietary software to open source. The other path is repurchasing. A lot of customers are moving towards the SaaS-based model, towards solutions like Workday, Drupal, and Salesforce. The AWS Marketplace hosts a large number of products, infrastructure as well as software as a service that organizations can procure and use using the same pay-as-you-go model as our other infrastructure services. And of course, re-architecture. Organizations may want to completely reimagine their applications and move right to the state-of-the-art by leveraging the broadest set of container, serverless, and managed NoSQL offerings. And you never know what you're going to find until you look, and it's not uncommon for us to find that 10 to 20% of an enterprise IT portfolio can simply be shut off. And of course, there's going to be some portion that might be not appropriate at your particular point in time, and something that you may want to hold on to in your on-prem data center. Our customers tell us that having hundreds of examples like this is one of the reasons why they find AWS a great platform to migrate to. And we're going to continue to harvest these learnings from our experience so that we can provide benefit to you as customers to help accelerate your journey as you look to move your workloads to AWS. In addition to making sure each application migration meets your objectives outlined in your business case, we often see migration strategy decisions influenced by the age or business risk of the application under consideration. It's typically pretty easy to migrate any modern virtualized x86 platform. and much more complex to modernize something like mainframes, although we formed some pretty strong experience and strategies around these as well. And partners like Infosys and TMXsoft have some pretty strong migration modernization capabilities that they've partnered with us on. We also see a lot of repurchasing to a SaaS-based model, particularly for back office and using end user compute areas that we covered in the previous slide. There are a number of tools that can help automate your migration. Cloud Endure partnered with Cloud CTP to help one of our customers migrate 58 applications to AWS in under a week. And because they offer continual syncing, many migrations can be performed with little to no scheduled downtime. We also have offerings like AWS Snowball, which is an 80 terabyte storage appliance with US Department of Defense security that we can ship to you, that you can load up with large amounts of data, change the shipping label using a Kindle attached device that is tamper-proof, and ship that back to us so that we can load it into your AWS environment. Last year, we launched something called AWS Snowball, which is a 100 petabyte semi-truck trailer that you can park outside your data center to migrate and back up really large amounts of data to and from AWS. And yes, there are still instances where physical things on wheels can still be faster than the internet. The AWS database migration service is a simple to use service that supports the migration of most commercial and open source database platforms to and from AWS, either targeting our fully managed database as a service offering or allowing you to continue to run your own databases on top of EC2. I've yet to meet a customer who's happy with some of their proprietary licensing arrangements. And so we're seeing a lot of enterprises utilize the database migration service to migrate things like Oracle databases to Amazon Aurora or relational database as a service that supports both MySQL and now Postgres databases that combine the speed and availability of high-end commercial databases with the simplicity and cost effectiveness of open source databases. AWS File Gateway will allow you to mount your NFS in your local environment and have those stored as objects written to S3 or EFS. And the AWS Server Migration Service allows you to migrate your virtual machine images to and from AWS. As I mentioned before, we have AWS Marketplace, which offers approximately 3,000 tools and products and services that you can deploy in seconds into your environment for a variety of migration scenarios. And it's great to have all these tools to help you migrate, but we got a lot of feedback from customers like yourself that says you could use some help in orchestrating and using these tools together to automate those complex multi-step migrations. So last year, at the end of last year, we launched the AWS Migration Hub, which can act as a central hub for planning, orchestrating, and monitoring the migration of your data centers to the cloud. You can use AWS Migration Hub to find the AWS and partner migration tools that best fit your needs, view a status update across all your migrations, and easily identify and troubleshoot any issues that you come across. And best of all, the Migration Hub is available to all AWS customers at no additional charge, and you only pay for the cost of the migration tools that you use, and of course, any resources you consume on AWS. Just to give you a sense of how broad-based these tools are being used, at the end of last year, when we took these metrics, over 500,000 VMs have been migrated using our server migration service. Over 45,000 databases were migrated using our database migration service. And we've discovered more than 500,000 on-prem resources using our application discovery service, with over 160 petabytes of storage migrated using Storage Gateway. And snowballs have traveled enough distance to round the world over 250 times. So we're fully confident in the tools that we can provide to you as customers to help migrate servers, database, and storage to our platform because of the experience and scale that we've gained over the last number of years. Anyone who's heard me talk about enterprise transformation knows that I'm a super strong believer that having a cloud center of excellence to serve as the fulcrum and catalyst by which you transform your IT organization, particularly around things like change management and training, is critically important. I don't know about you, but in my experience, infrastructure teams and app teams don't always see eye to eye. Effective cloud teams are breaking this mold and becoming heroes in their organization by being much more aligned to the business, positioning themselves to meet demand much faster, and breaking down the traditional silos within IT organizations. And because they don't have to spend time racking and stacking gear, they can spend more time listening to what the business needs and being able to service those needs. And as each migration kicks into high gear, we're seeing lots of cloud teams become laser focused on enabling the business and teams with best practices from around the organization without being a typical kind of command and control gatekeeper. I'm a super big fan of scorecards. We found that being transparent around progress helps create some friendly competition and help drive desired behaviors. It's not uncommon for us to see migration scorecards at the leadership levels to incent teams to move fast, to be compliant against best practices and drive efficiencies by being the lowest cost migrator. And as you scale your migration, you will find yourself in a position to continue to optimize your applications as they land in and your landing zone. Your landing zone and your operating model will evolve as you continue to gain skills and knowledge in your migrations. Those foundational elements we talked about before will naturally improve. For example, your cloud team, which may have started lean and small, may scale and grow into a proper cloud business office that cover things like governance, finance, marketing to the broader organization, and a cloud engineering team that can cover the infrastructure and onboarding of new services. You'll become much more deliberate and efficient on how you leverage the various migration methodologies and strategies. You'll evolve your landing zone to continue to automate more and more of your operating model, which can be a combination of using AWS managed services along with your AWS account that you manage yourself. And as you continue to mature your hybrid architecture using additional tools from AWS and our partners, this will allow you to seamlessly communicate from cloud-based applications to your systems running on-prem and have common monitoring, compliance, and profiling tools that interop with both your cloud applications and your existing assets in your data center. Typically, hybrid architectures start very simple. You have one or more applications running in the cloud that need to talk back to your data centers, which you can connect with Amazon's virtual private cloud. And as your bandwidth needs increase, moving to AWS Direct Connect can provide customers with predictable network performance. And this means that you can send data to your applications and your partners. As customers become more experienced with the cloud, their data center footprint will likely shrink in favor of their cloud footprint. And we find that many customers begin to favor cloud-based tools that can help them manage both their on-prem cloud environments. These include tools like Amazon Storage and File Gateway, and some of our DevOps tools like Code Commit, Code Deploy, and Code Pipeline. And partners like New Relic, AppDynamics, Adadata, Dynatrace, and ServiceNow that can help you manage your cloud and on-prem environments. We're also very excited about integrating with other cloud platform providers like VMware with their VMware Cloud on AWS solution, which customers like Moody's and the state of Louisiana are using to accelerate their migrations, or OpenShift, which customers are using to integrate with their Red Hat OpenShift container platform, and Cloud Foundry, who's made native AWS services available through their platform and being used companies like Liberty Mutual. And we'll continue to look at tools customers use. Certainly container-based platforms are super popular, and we have a broad-based set of offerings to help support those as well. We've been helping customers implement hybrid architectures for more than 10 years now, and all of our enterprise customers are running some form of hybrid architecture, which is how we've been able to develop the industry's largest set of tools and processes and reference architectures and experience to help you leverage the cloud while you continue to take advantage of your existing IT investments. Now, as much as I'd like everyone here to be able to remember everything I just walked you through, I'd like to take it back to your organizations. I realize that's probably unlikely. So many customers have asked us to package up all these things and these learnings from our customers so that we can prescriptively guide them through the process, which is why we've developed the Migration Acceleration Program, which pulls everything together AWS has learned about large-scale migrations into one program so that we can help you create that business case. We can help you build that right foundational set of core elements for your organization and build that migration plan to help you retire as much of your technical debt and focus on the innovation that your business and customers demand. Now, it's still day one, as we like to say at Amazon, but we've worked with hundreds of customers in the last few years on this program. And on average, these customers are migrating 4 times faster than their peers, lowering their costs by 35%, and dedicating at least 25% or more of their resources toward revenue generating activities. The components of this program include a migration methodology, a robust set of tools that I described to automate and accelerate migration scenarios, a large and growing ecosystem of vetted partners that have experience and skills, our own AWS migrations specialty practice within our professional services organization, a training program aimed at helping IT professionals understand and execute these migrations, and an investment model which in some cases will help customers understand and smooth out the bubble that's created in their budget in performing a migration. We built this into a repeatable 3-step process. So when we understand your business goals, we'll work with you to do a quick half-day assessment to understand where you are in your journey and to make sure that you can take credit for some of the investments that you may have already made. Next, our AWS and migration partners will work with you to identify and fill any gaps in your foundational elements, for example, in your patch management, and help create that compelling business case. And once everyone's comfortable with the business case and the plan, we can move into scaling the migration, and in many cases make some investments to help offset those migration costs. And if this is something that's of interest to you, please reach out to your AWS account team about getting started with an overview of the program and getting started with the investment. We've developed a partner migration competency to help customers choose a partner amongst the industry's largest and most competent cloud migration ecosystem. These partners who have achieved this competency have a proven track record of delivering large-scale migrations and having the people, process, and technology capabilities to help you as customers with these large-scale migrations. Accenture, whose migration factory helped the Coca-Cola bottling company exit one of their data centers in just 14 months. And also Accenture helped Benel with one of the fastest migrations that I've seen, with migrating over 5,500 server instances to AWS in just under 9 months. CTP helped Netaxis migrate 70% of their IT portfolio to AWS with end-to-end automation, I should say, better cost transparency and increased agility. And Slalom helped Travis Perkins build a strong foundation, helping them exit their 2 data centers. And we're hard at work with dozens of other partners that you can confidently work with to help you with your legacy migration projects. These partners are working with hundreds of enterprises from every major industry vertical. Many of the partners listed here have thousands of trained AWS certified professionals spread throughout the world to help customers with their migrations in the locations that they need help. And to make sure that your team, everyone on your team, has a solid understanding of all the concepts we covered, we recently developed a Migrating to AWS course. Migrating to AWS is a 2-day instructor-led training program designed to help you as IT professionals involved with migration projects to help you understand moving your workloads to AWS, which wraps up everything that we've talked about. And of course, over the next year, we'll offer this course for anyone engaging in a mass migration with us. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and at this point, open the floor up to some questions.